It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. Today is September 9th, and I want to welcome you to episode 38 of Coffee and Cloud Native. My name is Adrian Goins. Every night, I and my army of bots scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and every day you'll find me here to share the bits that I find interesting. This is a curated list of content. Why do I say this every morning? Like, most of you who join the show are regulars, but I always just hope that there's like new people that come in and they're like, well, YouTube just recommended this thing to me and I don't know what it is I'm looking at. And I feel like if they just join and they don't know what we're talking about, that I'm obligated to shit blah. This is me hanging out with you, and I'm happy that you're here. You know why you're here. I know why you're here. Yeah, so there you go. However, if you're watching now or in the future, please click the thumbs up button on the video so YouTube shares it with other people, so we do get new people in the show. And subscribe to the channel, or don't subscribe to the channel, or I don't know, tell your friends, tell your mom. Hey, how many of you bought your mom a Volterra individual plan to protect her Kubernetes cluster after yesterday's show? Huh? Raise your hand? No? Okay. My mom watches the show sometimes, also doesn't understand a thing that I'm talking about, but she likes to see her little boy on the internet. She gets very happy with it. But I mean, that's what moms are for, right? To get happy about the stuff that we do. We do have people in the chat that I wish to say good morning to. In fact, I've been saying good morning to those who came early, but I'll say them. Oh, man. I'll say their names out anyway. Good morning to Justin, Peter, Wifebot, and what else is in there? Ariel is in there. Got some people showing up as the show starts. Nice to see you. Madam Lori, Trix. Hey, Trix. Yeah, just under the wire. Mauricio, good morning. And yeah, so Trix says that there are new folks that might not be in the chat. That's true. That's true. So if y'all don't mind my little standard intro and outro, then I'll just keep doing it. Because the idea behind the show is, you know, that we want more people to join. We want people to come and learn and hang out. Cześć Wojtek. Sajad. Hey, Sajad, good morning. Nice to see you again. And yeah, so if you're watching and you're not in the chat, come join the chat. It's currently on YouTube. Might not stay there. Well, today it'll stay there. But come join the chat and hang out with us and talk. Oh, and Trix likes the spiel on the way in and out. Okay, spiel stays. Let's get started, shall we? Here we have a lesson in yak shaving. Are y'all familiar with the term yak shaving? I think I talked about it on an earlier show. So if you're not, I'm going to tell you anyway. Yak shaving. Yak shaving is where you're like, oh, there's this little problem that I have to solve. And then you start solving it. You're like, well, before I can solve that, there's this other problem that I have to solve. And so you go to that. And then that becomes a different problem. And then that becomes two other problems. And pretty soon, it's late in the day. You haven't even begun to work on the problem that you sat down to work on. And you're like 96 problems deep. And then you have to figure out how to recover that. Well, that's what this article is. But he did a wonderful job. This is Arseny from Ukraine. And he started out writing a blog about node affinity. And then he started running into not really issues, but more conditions. He was going to build a load testing system for a migration that they're doing that I'll tell you about in a second. And he's like, well, I wonder, how does node affinity work with autoscaling or the cluster autoscaler or everything? And as he uncovered these issues, he made notes of the questions, and then he went down and he figured them out, and he noted everything, and he came back and he wrote, can you see the cursor? Yeah, look in the top right corner of the browser window there. You see that little dot? That's the scroll bar. This article is amazing. If you've ever wanted to know or been curious about the combination of scheduling and load testing in a Kubernetes cluster, Arseny's got you taken care of. But I'll give you the high level view. So he wrote a tool using Apache Benchmark. Hey, table of contents. He wrote a tool using AB that would trigger the horizontal pod autoscaler which would then trigger the cluster autoscaler because he wanted to know how all of this scaling up would work and how node affinity would work for pods when new nodes came into the cluster. Seems like a totally reasonable question. I mean, I'm often sitting down eating a bowl of cereal being like, I wonder how node affinity works with cluster autoscaling. And I know all of you do too. Maybe not with node affinity and autoscaling, but we all have those things where we're brushing our teeth or we're in the shower and we must know the answer. Well, he didn't stop there. He expanded his test to different EC2 node types. And the reason that he was doing all of this is because they're currently running DigitalOcean, I love you, but this is an indictment. They're currently running a DigitalOcean. They're running on 50 droplets and they spend around $4,000 US a month. And they want to move it to EKS because they expect that based on the instance sizes that Amazon has available, that rate will drop from $4,000 a month to about $600 a month. The numbers speak for themselves. But moving on, he gives every detail about how he plans to do this. Like even before you get to the testing, he's like, here's my full architecture plan, and here's my full test plan, and here's my criteria for success, and here's the instance types that are available, and he goes crazy. So you've got, there's his AWS config there, his testing plan, 4 core, 16 gigabytes of RAM, testing on 3 instances of the same type. And then he launches a cluster. Let me scroll this down to where he gets to the actual testing part because his graphs are really cool. Scroll. Okay, so day 1, they start running into issues. Their goal was to get to 15,000 simultaneous users. And on day 1, well, it all fell apart. There we go. Load testing. Day 1. Oh no, they got to about 8,000 and everything just pooped the bed. But he figured out that this was actually PHP FPM and the configuration that he had in the application itself. So cool, he fixes that. Day 2, they set out to load test again and stuff starts to fall apart again. This time, how far did they get? Oh yeah, look at that error number over there. 21% errors. They're up at about 10,000 now, and so they call the test off and they start digging in further, and this one was his fault. This one, he realized that because they were load testing, they weren't using a real environment, and the database backend was just too small. So the RDS instances started rejecting connections, and then there was an interesting configuration option in AWS where it's supposed to use the slaves and it's supposed to cascade and it didn't, and they went to AWS and they asked about it. I'm not going to find it, but AWS was like, maybe the documentation is like a high-end suggestion of what's possible and not a real number. It was like, you should be able to get 10,000 connections, and they got to like 4, and AWS was like, maybe it's up to 10,000 connections, or it was something funny like that. Day 3, though. Day 3 is where everything got great. What's wonderful about this is most of the article is actually about troubleshooting the failures and the analysis that they did and digging in and fixing and changes, and then not trying to rush it, being like, okay, we're gonna start this again on the next day. Woo! Yeah, so this is not the next day. This is the end of day 2, 52% error rate. Everything's really bad. I love the color red that they're using. There's no way you can mistake that for being anything else but a total failure. And then on day 3, well, you know what? I'm not going to tell you about day 3. You're going to have to read the article yourself to hear how it ended up. It's written almost like a suspense novel or something. All I can say about day 3 is that they still had some problems to solve, and some of the things that they did to solve them are things that you've heard me share on this show. I thought that was kind of neat. Arseny from Ukraine, man knows what he's doing. Thank you for sharing it with us. If you were at KubeCon this year, and by at KubeCon I mean sitting at your desk, one of the most talked about presentations was this advanced persistence threats presentation from Ian Coldwater and Brad Giesemann. They popped it up on YouTube a few days ago, and there's slides on Speaker Deck as well. The talk doesn't show you how to actually compromise a cluster. They assume that you've already compromised the cluster. What it shows you is how to use the infrastructure components that are already present inside of Kubernetes to maintain persistence. Any of you who are watching the show who are not pony hackers, persistence is the objective to maintain a connection to a compromised environment, ideally without them ever finding out that you were there. So avoiding logging, avoiding being packet captures, getting data exfiltrated from the cluster so that you don't have to continuously go back in and bang on doors and kick through windows to get access to it. Well, they show you how to do this with the stuff that Kubernetes already has. And they show you examples of things like schlepping secrets out of the cluster whenever they get changed. They also show you a really, really sexy way to totally misuse K3s to keep that persistent access to a cluster in GKE, EKS, or AKS. I saw this. It's really sexy. If you haven't seen the show, you should watch it just for that. It comes up about 2/3 of the way through. And they show how to do all of these things with a minimal chance of detection. This is also written kind of like a suspense novel, like a Jason Bourne movie or something like that. And it reminded me of these books that I used to have that were called like Stealing the Network, and they had subtitles like How to Own the Box or How to Own an Identity. And they were part fiction and part theory, but it talked about things like why printers are really great things to compromise inside of an environment. They were just super enjoyable. Their talk had some of that flair, except that they're both fortunate enough to actually get to do the things that they're talking about, which is a pretty cool job, right? It's about 30 minutes long. It's very enjoyable. We'll have that linked in the show notes. Next, service proxy. Lots of people jump from stock Kubernetes networking straight to service mesh. But do you understand what it is that makes a service mesh work? Service meshes are comprised of a control plane and a data plane. The control plane controls the data plane. It tells it what to do. But the data plane is the thing that actually does the work. And in most service meshes, this is delivered by Envoy. This article is from Ivan Velichko about the data plane, and he's got fun sketches to help explain what's going on. I love sketches, especially since I can't draw. What if you could build your own data plane just with Envoy? Well, remember that nothing that we see people do is magic. Ultimately, it all comes down to base components that we all know how to work with, and it's just they're doing the work of wiring it together for us. And that's what he shows you how to do. And he's got fantastic examples that explain what the logic and theory is, and then the benefits of doing it a certain way, and then, oh my gosh, what's that? That's a sidecar, little Jimmy. And it's another really long article. But what's really cool about this is he includes examples of how to do stuff. So nothing here depends on Kubernetes. It uses Podman, Prometheus, Envoy, and a couple of little custom HTTP programs that he wrote to demonstrate the communication path. Since Prometheus is involved, you even get some cool metrics out of it that show you requests. These are somewhere down near the bottom. There you go. And if you want to know what happens in the data plane of a service mesh, or how to use a service proxy sidecar to move communication around between a bunch of pods, just even taking Kubernetes out of it, you can just sit down over lunch and put this together, and you'll get a really good understanding of how all of those pieces fit together. Uh-oh. I see Nightbot's being talked about in the chat. I can make Nightbot do the intro. That's funny. Yeah, Nightbot's job is to just monitor the chat. And I told you yesterday, it was actually my fault that Nightbot didn't join the chat. I logged into Nightbot, and you log in with your YouTube account, but you have to actually click a button that says join the channel so that he joins the channel, and then I have to go in and make him a moderator for the community, and I skipped both of those steps. So, yeah, my fault. I'm the bot failure. Yeah. So Jason says that service mesh is just a concept, and he's absolutely right. Service mesh is not a thing. It's not like an object you can put your hands on. It's not something that you can pick up and move to another location. It's just a method of simplifying, well, or complexifying, depending on how you look at it, communication within an environment. And that's it. Anytime that you are learning something and you find yourself struggling as though you have to understand this object, just pick it apart into its, I don't know what the word is, into its pieces. There's like its requisite pieces or its component pieces or whatever. Just blow that thing up and then understand the parts that are going on inside of it. And what you'll find is that, oh, well, this is made up of 10 items and I already understand 7 of them. So I just need to figure out what these other 3 are and then reassemble it and understand the linkage between them. That's all service mesh is. Constituents! Oh, God, I love hanging out with you guys. Thank you. Yes, break it up into its constituent pieces. Okay, Jason, I'm going to put you on the spot. There's a word I've been trying to figure out. I'm a little sniffly today. I apologize for that. There's a word I've been trying to figure out. There's one of those words where when I say the sentence, my brain almost produces the word, and I think it starts with C. I actually think it starts with CON. And the definition is the logical inverse of something. It's not converse. My brain says that there's another word. So you're talking about, let's say you're talking about a subject, and the logical inverse of the subject is, but there's a word for logical inverse that I've been struggling with for like a week, and I can't get the brain to cough it up. So if you know what that is, smart guy, let me know. Next up. Oh, he's thinking. I've assigned him a task. I'll take random words in Adrian's head for 100, Alex. Okay, this came up in the recent submissions. This was actually supposed to get on the show yesterday. Does it start with contra? Michael wants to know. I don't know. I just know it starts with CON, I think. My brain's not participating. I was not going to put this on the show because it is an article from August, and I try to keep stuff within the last 2 to 3 days, unless it's Monday and nobody's doing anything, or it's August, in which case, whatever. We go scrape the bottom of the barrel. However, so it's about single sign-on for Kubernetes, and it in itself is a little bit of a yak shave. It uses Okta. I'll explain in a second why I decided to put this on the show. Let's just talk about it. Single sign-on for Kubernetes. Somebody wanted to put a single sign-on up for a single site on his Kubernetes cluster, and he quickly realized that what you do for one site, you do for all sites. So he's like, okay, fine. Yeah, let's roll up our sleeves and let's get dirty. This article shows you how to build an SSO environment. That's just his sample site. How to build an SSO environment using Okta. In fact, somewhere down here, he has a thing that's pretty funny. He's like, oh yeah, you need to use external DNS. If you don't use external DNS, don't get sad. Wah, wah, wah. Because lots of old people who don't know how to do things in the modern way, they configure their DNS servers manually as well. I read that and I was like, oh man, he totally just called me out. Like, I don't use external DNS to create stuff for ingresses because I don't create ingresses that often. But yeah, that's just another place where you should just put it into your cluster, and then it's another thing that you don't have to do. Anyway, it uses a thing called Vouch Proxy, which is an SSO solution for Nginx. I don't have Vouch up here. Anyway, Vouch, it's an open source solution, SSO for Nginx. With Vouch installed, you can enable single sign-on to any service with as few as 4 annotations to an ingress. Sounds good, right? Except, take a look at these annotations. He didn't say 4 easy annotations. It's a little noisy, but hey, whatever. It's single sign-on with annotations. I brought this back because this also showed up. I really like when things surface from multiple places within a day or so of each other, because that says that the thing out there, this unidentifiable subconscious universe or whatever is bubbling up stuff that's worth talking about. There's a word for that too. Synchronicity? I'm not going to try and be smart this early in the morning. Anyway, the bubbly dark universe thing surfaces things that are worth talking about. So this popped up and I was like, well, wait a minute. This popped up a day after the other thing. And so I brought the other thing back. Anyway, this OAuth 2 proxy. This gives you detailed steps on how to configure an OAuth app with your provider for basically every provider. Where's their... Yeah, look at that. Look at that list of providers. I don't know who's not in there. This has the world's longest list of configuration options that make it probably not that friendly, but super flexible. Yeah, I'm just going to scroll past all of these. We're not even going to go through them. So you can do pretty much anything that you want to do with this. What's the next thing? So logging. Lots of stuff can be done as env vars. So config maps and secrets are your configuration plan for this. And then it uses annotations as well on the ingress, which I'm not going to find very quickly. Nginx. There we go. Its annotations look a little bit nicer than the other, like the little Lua block there. Now, both this and Vouch, which was the thing we were looking at a second ago, are designed to work with Nginx. But I'm curious if any of you know something like this that will work with Traffic or HA Proxy or any other ingress. And we're not talking about like API gateways that have this stuff baked in, but just external solutions that we can connect to something besides Nginx, because not everybody uses Nginx, as we learned in last week's show. If so, let me know. Chat, comments, anything at all. Trick says nobody expects rocket science and scholarly discourse while you're still having your morning coffee and showing us neat stuff the bots found while we were asleep. Thank you, Trix, for your understanding. I try my hardest to be smart this early in the morning, and usually I just stumble. Smart people stuff. I love smart things. Even things that I'm not going to use. I love finding them and being like, oh, that's really cool. I think I've talked about this previously in the show as well, but I'm gonna do it anyway. When I get a book, I talk about this in my training class. When I find a book and I want to know if the book is useful, remember back when we had books, when we could go to these places called bookstores before they all went out of business? So you go to Barnes & Noble or you go to, well, whatever, and you open up the table of contents. You get the big, thick computer science books. Open up the table of contents and then flip to the index. And if the index was like 3 pages long in 64-point font, then I knew the book was crap. If the index was small font, but you know, to give you like an index of every place that they used the word the, then I knew that it was padded and the book was also crap. But if the index was small font, multiple pages, and every single subject in the index was something juicy and meaty, then I knew that the book was pretty good. But I wouldn't ever read these big monster books. I would just go through the table of contents to understand what the capability was. So that when I ran into a situation, I knew the functionality of the software conceptually, and or the solution, the operating system, the programming language, whatever the book was about. I understood the conceptual capability of it, and I knew that I had a resource to which I could go and retrieve the information that I needed. We are actually going to be talking about this in another live stream for Rancher coming up later today, where I've switched the Rancher office hours live stream to just a Rancher TV podcast. And it's going to be me, Jason, who's in the chat this morning, JVB from Rancher, and Kyle Rome, also from Rancher. And we are going to not only take questions from the office hours channel in the Rancher user Slack about Rancher and stuff, but we're just going to talk about whatever. So on the list is education, neuroplasticity, concepts about learning and what that does for the brain, technology, and we're just going to kind of let stuff go wherever it goes. So if you want to join us later on today for another random session of randomness, you can find that on the Rancher YouTube channel. And with that, let's jump to the tool of the day. Tool of the day, tool of the day. Today's tool of the day is not like a normal tool that I've been promoting. Usually I promote things where it's like, oh, here's a thing you can install and use, and that is a tool. This came across my desk yesterday. It is, as you can read, a simulator for the CKA and CKAD exams. Now, the CKA changed for 119 on September 1st, and they updated their simulator for all of the 119 stuff. It replicates the scenarios and the test structure for the exams, and it's not free. Normally, I put things on that are free or open source or whatever. This costs you 30 euros for 2 sessions, either of the CKA or the CKAD. Their objective is to give you a test environment that simulates the stress of taking a timed test with scenarios. These tests are not multiple choice or fill in the blank. They're like, here's a problem, go create a solution. And this simulates that. They actually recommend, and the reason they give you 2 sessions, they want you to take the first session at the beginning of your journey so that you understand how the test is structured and you can model your learning off of the ways that you need to demonstrate knowledge for the test. And then they want you to return later in your journey and do the test again. The scenarios between the 2 sessions are the same, and what this does, they even have it in the fact, because people are like, why are you giving us the same questions? Because when you're measuring something, you want to change one variable. So here, the variable that you're measuring is actually the change in your knowledge. I thought this was really neat, and I wanted to bring it on the show and say that if you're doing anything related to CKA or CKAD, this is a good tool to put in your toolkit. Last check of the chat. Oh, we still got 3 minutes left. What do? Do I end the show early, or do I talk about something else? Tell me in the chat. I will drink my coffee. I will count down the 10 seconds until people tell me. Nobody's telling me anything. Okay, well, that's it. We're just going to end it then. I've never ended a show early. I know. I actually skipped several things to jump to the tool of the day. Let's see what those are. Oh, this is a really good article. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. Okay. Last thing. It's funny. A tool of the day and then something else. I'm going to talk about this because it has a cool name. Everybody, how do you say this word? Everybody says it out loud, and unless you have a family member who was in the Navy or you yourself were in the Navy, you probably said forecastle. And that's wrong. It's actually forecastle. I don't know why. Because, it has fewer letters. It's easier to say with a mouthful of, chewing tobacco or whatever it is that... Anyway, forecastle. Forecastle is the fore end of a ship. It's actually the part underneath. If you saw Under Siege with Steven Seagal, wonderful movie from back in the 90s, before Steven Seagal got fat and weird, they lock all of the sailors up in the front part of the ship and they're like banging. That's the forecastle. Stakater has been on the show before. Let me jump back to get my notes for them. So they've been on the show in... well, whatever. They were on the show before. And I almost didn't put this on because I was like, I don't really know that it has value. But I think it does. They were on in episode 13. This works off of ingress annotations and builds a little dashboard of apps that are running in the cluster with URLs that are picked up from the ingresses itself. You can also set it to point to external apps. I know what's running in my cluster, But it's possible that there's lots of stuff running in your cluster and people may not know everything that's there, particularly if you have tools deployed that help people do stuff. While I'm a super nerd and I can remember things, based on URLs that reference stuff, a lot of people are visual, and giving your team a tool like this where they can just go to a dashboard page and click on an app is pretty cool. It has some security around limiting what namespaces it scrapes and who's allowed to access what, but Stakater, if you're watching, it gets a little muddy in the documentation when they start talking about the CRDs. You can do stuff with a direct config, annotations on the ingress. You can do stuff with a CRD, and then they have this like hybrid thing or something that I'm not really sure what the point is. So I don't know why you would need to use the CRD, which kind of combines the config and the ingress and something else. But since you can do everything you need to do without that, I figured I would bring it on and show it anyway. So there you go. Forecastle. I wonder if Stakater even knows that it's pronounced Forecastle. My dad was in the Navy. My mom was in the Navy too. My grandfather was in the Navy. Yeah, I have Navy in my blood. And I think that's it, right? Tool of the day in the wrong order. Adrian makes the show go long. I don't want to end early. There's so much to talk about. And if you liked what you saw today, then please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. I'm going to point the little subscribe thing right there. See? Do that. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell, get the notifications, and if you watch YouTube, you know how this works. I am here every weekday to talk about things, smart things, not smart things, hopefully smart things, drink my coffee, get excited. Being here with you guys starts my day right. I come out of this and I'm pumped, and I go put on some high energy music. I come back, I send the tweets out. I don't think that I can live without being here with you every weekday morning. So this is where you'll find me. Even if none of you show up, you'll still find me here. I will have all of the tweets, no, the links. I'll have all. Jesus. I will have all of the links to all of the smart stuff up in the video description and the show notes and the blah, 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 blah. In about a half an hour. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll get a notification when that happens. If you have something that you would like for me to consider for the show, please let me know. Hit me up. My video... My contact details. I have a teleprompter. And I can't even read it. Okay. My contact details are in the video description, or you can tweet with the CNCN hashtag and I will pick it up. If I mentioned a tool that you use, tell me in the comments. Whatever. This is my outro. You all know it. I'm going to totally screw it up. But I'll be here every weekday for as long as there's something to talk about. Please have a great day. If you want to have a not great day, don't. Just have a great day anyway. Do it for me. Keep learning. I hope to see you in the Rancher office hours later. That's at 1 p.m. Eastern. Just to come and talk about whatever. Even if you don't use Rancher, just join the Rancher user Slack, join the office hours channel, because there's no YouTube chat, and just come there. We're going to talk about whatever, because that's a lot more fun than structure, because we're grown-ups. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.